The presence of the German American Bund activities in the United States led to many political encounters in various areas of the country. The exchange of anti-Semitic views of camp leaders with their recruited youths against Americans is what led to their fall. The citizens and government of the United States explored the U.S. Constitution and laws to find a way to keep the German American Bund from spreading its propaganda and infiltrating our country.
The German American Bund started as a group called the German Brotherhood and several other different groups who got together and formed one organization. They were mostly people of German culture who believed in the current direction or the direction that that Germany was heading toward in 1930s. To understand that, if you look back 100 years, was the first of two big wars. The Germans had lost World War I, the first war, and they were angry about it. And they blamed, not themselves, but they blamed the Jewish people for having lost the war. So during the 1930s, there was this big movement to improve the pride of the Germans, to try and recover what they lost in the first war, to blame everything on the Germans, on the Jewish people. And those were the things that caused them to go into the Second World War. And the people in the German American Bund were in favor of those concepts and that movement in Germany. German nationalism and the dislike and the blame on the Jewish people.
The Bund was divided into three groups: the West, the East, and the Midwest. Each group had a leader to train an army and staff members to help direct the operations of the Bund. The Bund's exploration with the use of youth camps in the United States were for the purpose of getting the youth physically fit in a militarized manner and to spread hatred against the Jews. There were 24 camps all the way from California that the Bund started to build, 2 or 3 out in the Illinois and Wisconsin area, and 2 or 3 within a train ride or a day trip drive from New York City.
Well, one thing they did teach people was that the Jewish people were bad, and they made no secret about it. They didn't try to hide their belief. They wrote about it. They gave speeches about it. They even had demonstrations and boycotts trying to ruin Jewish people's businesses. And everyone knew it, and that was probably the biggest part of their presentation and one of the more distasteful aspects of their message.
On February 20th, 1939, thousands of Nazis gathered for a rally at an indoor arena. But this isn't in Germany. This is Madison Square Garden in New York City. They displayed a large banner of George Washington with German and American flags side by side. They were trying to demonstrate that the Bund was loyal to the U.S. while their teachings and organization followed Nazi beliefs.
You all have heard of me through the Jewish-controlled press.
The man speaking, Fritz Julius Kuhn, was elected by his people as the leader of the Bund, or association. His role was to expand the membership of the Nazi organization.
We, the German American Bund, organized as American citizens with American ideals and determined to protest ourselves, our homes, our wives and children against the slimy conspirators and the parasite hand of Jewish communism in our schools, our universities, our very homes.
On October 1st, 1937, Stanford resident Wolfgang Jung had just purchased 178 acres of land in Southbury, Connecticut's Kettletown area. Southbury, with a population of 1,200 people, was a very peaceful farming community. The community of Southbury did not think much about the purchase of this land. They only started worrying about 6 weeks later when they saw a bunch of people working to clear the land for later construction. With further exploration, it turned out to be Nazi loyalists in the U.S. They planned to turn the area into a Bund camp for the Nazi youths. Southbury did not want a Bund camp in their town. Local clubs and government officials urged Governor Wilbur Cross of Connecticut to find any way possible to keep the Bund out of Southbury. The Communist Party of the United States urged Governor Cross, as well as contacted Congress asking for help to remove the Bund from Southbury. Congressman William Citron wrote to Governor Wilbur Cross addressing the complexity of the issue. In his letter he wrote, "It is indeed sad to think that our freedom of speech, the bulwark of democracy, is being used by the Nazis." With the help of Reverend Lindsay, the pastor of the UCC Church in South Britain, and town officials of Southbury, they were able to organize and stop the camp from getting started. On December 14th, the massive turnout resulted in the town's officials having to move the meeting to South Britain Church. New zoning laws were approved by the legislature. These laws stated that the land in Kettletown was to be used for farming and residential use only.
Reverend Lindsay and Manley took this stand. There was a good chance, from what they knew, that a Nazi supportive government could take place. Nobody really knew how history would evolve. And if it did move in that way, their life probably, they very well could have been imprisoned or possibly worse. So they were aware that this Bund movement, they were keeping lists of enemies. And so and that applied really to everybody who signed that resolution. Every one of them was taking a pretty substantial risk if history hadn't turned out the way it had. And that's the amazing thing. When you look back, it looks easy, like, oh, of course that was the right thing to do. But in 1937, it wasn't all that clear.
Original zoning documents displayed at the Southbury Town Hall.
The exchange of the Bund's anti-Semitic propaganda caused multiple fights to break out and went against the American way of life. It angered the American people. Its leaders and lawmakers tried finding ways to stop the Bund. At first, Coons was a good leader who had control over the pro-Nazi people in America. Later, Bund activities led to clashes, street battles, most notably with Jewish veterans of World War I and with other groups. At the Madison Square Garden rally, a crowd of 20,000 people booed President Franklin D. Roosevelt and chanted the Nazi salutation, "Hail Hitler."
In 1939, the House of Un-American Activities Committee showed evidence of German American Bund ties to the Nazi government. Hitler declared war against the United States after Japan attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. The American Bund members found themselves in enemy territory. This encounter led to the Bund records being seized by federal agents, and many of the Bund members were denaturalized and imprisoned. In December 1941, the U.S. government outlawed the German American Bund, and the United States joined World War II.
And I was in charge of a ward. The second time we went to Naples, we stayed there a couple of months till the ship loaded up, and we came back. But this time, we had German prisoners. When we came to New York, we got into the harbor, and these fellows went to the portholes and they started looking at all the buildings, and they were naming the buildings. I says, "How do you guys know all these buildings?" He says, "Well, we had to learn them. They were part of our training because Hitler had planned on invading the United States."
The purpose of the Bund camps was to promote fascism, which means a loss of liberty, of democracy, of human rights. It spreads race hatred, destroys culture, and breeds war, which are in conflict to the United States' founding principles. We should not let history repeat itself.